what I'm going to start out with, everybody, is I really wanted to do a little recap of last week, because what we're doing this week and what we're talking about, it ties into last week for sure. So I want to do a little recap. So we're just going to do a recap on a couple of slides. So the first thing is just this idea about your results. So if you missed last week we learned that your beliefs and your attitudes and your behaviors actually dictate your results that you have in life. All right, so we did talk about your beliefs could be either positive or negative, but we also really touched on your beliefs could be conscious, or they can be on the less than conscious level. So what that means is that like 90% of the beliefs that you have in your belief system are at the less than conscious level. So you're actually means that you're not aware of them. So they're playing a role in the results in your life without you actually knowing what those beliefs are. And then 10% of those beliefs are conscious. So just to recap, your beliefs actually create your attitude on certain things, which then dictates your behaviors, which then drives your results. All right, so that's kind of the biggest thing that we need to know there as far as last week. The other thing about last week that I wanted to just do a reminder on is that we have a certain belief system that fits in a container. So in this example, it's a fishbowl. All of our results that we currently have in our life, they fit inside of our belief system, inside of that container. So when we want to, so today we're talking about what do you want in life? So when we have larger wants, desires, or goals in life that we aren't achieving, or maybe we have achieved, but it was only for a short period of time and then we revert back right away, is that what we require is a new, expanded, and more aware belief system in order to create those results and sustain them. So that was last week. So this week we're getting into what do you want? So unfortunately, we're going to sit here for, maybe 15 minutes and go through this session. Unfortunately, by the end of this 15 minutes, I'm not going to have a slide that's going to tell you what you want. This presentation was a little bit more challenging to put together, as in, like, what do I say? Because I don't know what you guys want. But all I can do is give you some information to help support you in what do you want and maybe what's going to be getting in the way. So that's what I really looked at as my purpose for this section. So even inside of the workbook, in pages 9, 10, and 11, if you actually read these, is that, again, the workbook doesn't tell you what you want. So there's some things that you can do in a workbook, and there's some things that you actually need to learn, apply, do some trial and error, and discover. So inside the workbook is that this exercise is based on the premise that you actually know what you want. And so it's an evaluation system on how you can learn where you're at right now, and how is that supporting or not supporting what you want, and how can you make a change, or how can you create some goals around it. So we are going to come back to this, but what I wanted to talk about first is some ideas or some things that could get in the way. So the idea is we need to be able to separate our shoulds from our wants. So anything that is like driven from a should. So for example, there's all these I should go, there's I should do, and I should be. So anything that's coming from that type of energy or should energy, it's more than likely based on some form of fear-based motivation system. All these things I should go to bed, I should go home, I should do my housework or schoolwork, and I should be better or be good. All these ideas, they aren't actually your wants, right? So what do you really want? So what we're going to have a look at is, what would you say you wanted? If you were to make a list of what you want in life, like everything with no limits. Let's say there's no fear involved, you have no restrictions. What are your dreams and desires? Like, what is it that you want? And so what if you're doing one of the replays of this right now, this is a really good opportunity to pause the video and make a list of the things that you want. So if you want to do that, pause the video right now and get going on that list. All right. All right, so if you did pause the video, we're back now. Here are some things that you may have come up with. You might have talked about a want to build a business. Maybe you have a want about writing a book, about releasing or losing weight, whatever your terminology is. Maybe you want like a loving relationship, travel the world, build that nonprofit. Maybe you've got like some cause that you really are working towards and have a desire to help and support. I know if you're my brother, you want to rebuild that hot rod in your garage. Hi, Will. Maybe you want to start a family or buy a house. These are all things like if nothing was in the way at all, what would you want to do? So we're going to call those like really some things that you want. So for me is before I did any type of personal development, I made a list myself. And so some of the things I came up with is I really want a successful business. So at the time when I started personal development, I sold real estate. And I wanted that to be successful. I wanted a happy family that included a husband. So I was a single mom when I started these programs, and I really wanted someone to share my life with. I wanted to travel, and I wanted to really detach from my parents' expectation of me. So when I would have started, I would have been probably about 24 years old. And I really was like I really wanted to please my parents. And so one of the things that I learned through this process is I really wanted to detach from that because that caused a lot of stress for me. Great. So the next step to this. So now we have what it is that we want if there was no limitations on us. But we do have this thing that sometimes gets in the way of what we want. And it really is, it's fear that gets in the way for us sometimes. And so what would you say you're afraid of? And this is going to be just as an important list as what it is that you want, that list. And what the challenging part is that unless you really like step outside of your belief system or step outside of your comfort zone, it sometimes is really hard to discover what you could be afraid of. If you think of life, if you go to the same job every day, if you're constantly around the same friends and family, you drive the same route all the time to and from work, you don't have a lot of opportunity to actually get out of your comfort zone. So this is the part where you may or may not know this right now. Your fears or what you're afraid of could actually be attached to some of your unconscious beliefs. That's just the way it is. So this is the part where I actually couldn't put it in a presentation or I couldn't put it in a workbook for you. But some of the possible fears. So as I've been working with people over my years is some common themes came up. And so I'm going to talk about those and you get to decide if that resonates with you or if it doesn't. Some people have a fear of being alone. Some is heights. Some really fear success. Some really fear failure. Rejection is another common fear. Responsibility, don't want to grow up, just want to kind of, hang around, play video games. Some fear being vulnerable in front of others. Some really fear being heard, being seen, even being loved, and being hurt. And so why this list is important is that these are the things, is that your fears will at some point get in the way of those other desires that you want in your life. So if you don't actually know your fears, or if you don't know what you're afraid of, the next step is I really think you need to, as an additional resource, get yourself registered in the level 1. There's some things we can and can't do in a workbook, and we cannot in a workbook and in a presentation, help you learn what your fears are, when you're sitting in the comfort of your home. So you do have to step out a little bit if you want to. So your fears do get in the way of what you want. So this is a fear. I was actually curious when I was creating this. I'm like, what is a fear anyways? Like, let's look up the definition. It's an unpleasant emotion caused by a belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. So, in other words, is that your beliefs and your attitudes get in the way of your results. So if you remember, this chart right here is that we had the beliefs, could be positive or negative, conscious or unconscious, that creates the attitude. Well, the fear is an attitude. So you have a belief about something, and the attitude that you adopt or create with that situation is fear, which then can cause behaviors on things that you do or don't do, like we talked about last week, which then can get in the way of those desired results, or those create fear-driven results, right? So the formula isn't so great this end when it's initiated with fear. Like, you're not going to get the results that you really want. And today's exercise is about that. Like, what do you really want and how can you get it? So it could be that your wants and fears, or your beliefs and your results. It could be one or the other. So in my life, when I talked about those things that I wanted, so I really wanted freedom. I wanted to be outside of my parents' expectations. But I actually, in life, I really was a people pleaser, and I was scared to step outside of that bubble. And I wasn't aware of that until I did some of this work. I really wanted adventure. Like I said, I wanted to travel, but also scared of the predictability and the control that I had inside of my house. So those two things, they actually contradict each other. So I could clearly articulate that I wanted that, but I didn't actually understand the fear that was getting in the way at the same time. So I wanted money. Every 20-year-old wants money. And I also feared the responsibility that came with money. And lastly, is I really did want a loving relationship, but I feared being lonely, and I feared actually being loved. Like I actually said last week that I wouldn't let him love me early in our relationship. I really feared that. So this is really essential when you're looking at what it is that you want in your life. So when you're doing exercises, exercise 2 is that this is based on the premise, like I said, that you know what you want. And so you get to, so when you're moving forward in this exercise, you want to move forward with those things. So you get to evaluate yourself on where you are in these life areas, whether it's your self-confidence, your career satisfaction, your primary relationship. And then the next page, page 11, is in which life areas are you most effective? Where are you most least effective? And how can you increase your effectiveness in a certain area? So then you can kind of set some goals around that to really kind of look into what it is that you want. So if you're still struggling with this concept, because this actually is really one of the more challenging things to do on your own. And so you're welcome to book a 1-hour session with me, where in that session, we're going to go through what your values are. We're going to evaluate where you're at with your values. And then because of that, you can discover if your current belief system will support or limit the wants in your life. So remember when we had the fish bowls at the very beginning of the presentation? So what it is that you want right now in your life, is it in the fish bowl that you're currently in, or is it in the other one? Do you need to expand your belief system for that? So if you want to book that appointment, this is the link for that appointment, but I know this is a presentation, and so I will put this link in the comments afterwards. And then also, if you're on a computer and you wanted to just quickly scan this and book an appointment, you can do that. So I'll give you a second just to do that right now, to scan that. This 1-on-1 is going to provide great value to anybody who takes it. You are going to walk away feeling like you understand yourself better, where you're currently at, and how can you get what it is that you want.